So clearly the 240 is absolutely disgusting. I obviously want to put my LS3 back into it, but I want to make sure that all of the things that I should have done years ago get done. But it might as well be a 240 wash party, because not only do I want to get this thing squared away, washed up and looking clean, but the underside of the new 240 that we scooped up not too long ago, the bottom side of this 240 has some undercoating that I'd like to be able to remove and then just verify that it wasn't coated over rust. Because I'm gonna do this car right, I want to make sure that we have absolutely no rust. So it is quite the eventful night here. We got Mike working on the crazy carts, trying to get them fixed so we can have some good old tandems out on my cul-de-sac. And then we got Victor, who brought over his, what, $700 jet ski?
Free.
Well, free.
In parts, it was like $600 to fix it the first time. We don't know how much it's gonna cost the second time to fix it, so.
So it's not running, but hey, we got summer coming up, so we gotta get this thing running. The 240's sitting back here. I got it washed, I got it clean. Here, I'll maybe give you a little sneak peek. It'd be a crime to say that this car is clean, because obviously it's not. But the interior cleaned up pretty nice. Obviously it's gonna need to be repainted. Put all of the spare body panels in here because I don't really have any use for them currently. But yeah, it was totally weird just taking a pressure washer to the inside. Just felt so wrong to do. So she'll be sitting here at least until I decide its future or its fate, because what's taking priority right now is what's in the garage up on the lift. That being my $1,700 S13 shell that we picked up, what, 2-3 weeks ago. There was a bunch of road gunk from the years that this thing was a daily, and what I thought was some undercoating, but I think it might just be some caked on shit from the years that it's been driven.
So I went ahead and spent a couple more hours grinding away at all of the road grime. Had plenty of it as evidence to show you just how much was caked on there. And she started to clean up really nice. We put some painter's plastic over top of my important equipment and did something kind of stupid. Pressure washer was getting absolutely drenched, started running weird, and then died.
Hopefully we just didn't cause a bigger issue. If we did, I'm screwed.
I noticed it was low on gas, and thinking that that might be the issue, crisis averted.
Garage is soaked. Luckily I have my painter's plastic over it, so I should be able to scoop all this water out with that broom. Everything's still soggy wet. Honestly, I don't think this did much. I mean, it did some, but hitting it with that die grinder with the steel brush attachment to it obviously did a lot more. I mean, it's more abrasive than a power washer, but it's cleaning up pretty decent. All right, for sure. Not gonna do that again. Now we've caused more problems than we've solved. I'm gonna have wet plywood there. Gonna have to get it dry. Don't want a soggy ass garage and then that to turn into mold. So we have made a lot of progress on the 240. The hatch is out, the sunroof is out, and just about everything other than the brake lines is out of the engine bay. Clutch master, brake booster, brake master's gone. I've been debating on taking out the chassis harness, but I think for now it can stay. I removed the driver front fender just to make sure that there was no hidden rust anywhere, and it checks out. And as far as the interior is concerned, pretty much the same. We got the steering column out, needed to remove it to get access to the brake master or brake booster bolts. And last but not least, I took out the rear subframe, diff, axles, all of it. And the reason for doing so is because I want to be able to paint the complete underside of the car with some rust preventative coating, so I never have to worry about this thing rusting in the years that I know I'm gonna own it. The subframe and all that is sitting right over here. Looks to be in pretty decent shape. Obviously, we had a bent lower control arm. Need to get a replacement one of those. And the gas tank, which happens to be relatively new, and it looks pretty good. As far as the hatch is concerned, it does look like we found out that it was yellow once before, and I did find another suspect spot of rust that we'll need to address right on the pin where the hatch strut clicks into. So yeah, that is unfortunate, but hey, we can address it now before it's too late. And now for the unfortunate news. I never spoke on it in past videos, but if you watched them through their entirety, Yes, I did get this car for $1,700. And as much as you could say it might be too good to be true, granted, I know I still got a good deal, but the true history of this car, I've been hiding from you. And if you couldn't tell, then I'm not gonna say shame on you. You would have to not have eyes to not see it. But like I said, this control arm here was bent. And how would a control arm bend in such a way? I mean, look, completely bent downwards. That would mean that this car had to have been wrecked. I'm surprised none of you guys called me out on it, but it's not that bad. Looking at it, I showed you guys how the rear quarter panels had quite a few dents on them. Obviously, you would have seen that there's primer that's been sprayed to keep the bare metal that's been exposed from rusting. But with what the previous owner had told me, he was driving through Orlando and it was wet outside. And I guess he was with his buddy and they took a corner getting onto one of the highways and he ended up sliding into the guardrail pretty much on all four corners of the car. Guess he hit it, bounced off, spun, and then hit it on the other side. I don't know, I wasn't there, but the damage is pretty apparent. The passenger side fender was crunched in. It's not gonna be salvageable. You can see it should be a straight line here and it's crooked inwards. And there's a nice solid dent on the curved part of the body line. Now for the damage that then translated from the impact on the driver's side or passenger side, you can see it really apparent in the engine bay. The battery trays are notorious for rusting out, but if you take a look, let me move this over, right where the headlight mounts, and luckily not exactly where it mounts, but on the same plane, the chassis is bent inwards a bit. Obviously not enough to warrant a core support replacement, but just enough to where it tweaked to the inside here. I mean, you can see this shouldn't look that way. It should be all flat. So I was thinking about ratcheting this thing up to a tree and trying to pull it out just a little bit more. I don't think it will be all that bad if we could just tweak it out just a little bit. I mean, and on top of that, we'll have to address the big gaping hole where the battery tray was. We do have a little bit of rust that's crept its way up the fender well area, which I think we'll be able to address. But as far as that is concerned, that's what seems to be the limited amount of damage that the car saw in the previous owner's accident. Obviously, I think he did a fender replacement on the driver's side, since this is not the OEM color, but I looked everywhere and I didn't see any elements of damage. What I am bummed about though, I think we're gonna have to go over fenders on this car. I reached out to one of my buddy's PDR guys. If you don't know what that is, that's paintless dent repair. This fender arch here is bowed outwards. I tried heating it up and pushing it back in and had no luck. And similarly, right around the gas cap, I did the same thing and probably made it worse. I could probably just slap a Bondo in there, sand it down and even out all of the dents. But to me, I don't know what I would value more in a car like this. It's staying stock fenders up front. Do I do a rear over fender? Or do I slap Bondo on it, call it a day? Let me know what you guys think. It's a bummer, yes, but again, for $1,700, I couldn't expect perfection. Now, I spent way too many hours this weekend scrubbing down the underside of the car. Obviously, we pressure washed it, I degreased it, and I took a wire brush on a die grinder pretty much to every surface. Couldn't find any rust, so that's good. And I'm happy to see that it cleaned up decently well. The frame rail's a little dented on the driver's side, but the whole undercarriage looks solid. Now, I've heard good things and bad things about rubberized undercoatings. I live in Florida, so I'm not all that worried, obviously, about salt, and I'm not driving this thing on the beach. But as a little warning for all of you, if you do want to undercoat your cars, make sure you put like an epoxy primer or an etch primer or just something to keep the bare metal from being exposed to the elements. Because what happens is when you apply that rubberized coating, it seals in the moisture and it just allows it to rust out. And there are a lot of pretty gnarly videos that I've seen of like trucks in the Northeast suffering from frame rot because of those rubberized coatings. So I think in this case, we might be able to get away with just throwing on a coat of flat black primer just to get a little bit of uniformity in the undercarriage and just some general surface protectant. Because when I was using that wire brush, I did go down to some bare metal in some areas. But hey, I'm just making sure I'm doing my due diligence and treating this car the way it deserves to be treated. Now the blue 240 is still underneath the car cover. Unfortunately, it's gonna stay here for now. For those of you that might be new to the channel, I bought it back in 2017. It was LS1 swap. We thought the LS1 had low compression. Turns out it was just a bad Harbor Freight tool. Don't use those Harbor Freight compression checkers. Trust me, they're bad, they suck. But given that we were gung-ho on that there was something wrong with the engine, I scooped up a Crate LS3, threw it in, and treated this as my competition car. Granted, it was nowhere near like a Formula formula drift ready type of car. It was just something that I could go out, drive hard, and have fun with. And if I wanted to do a competition here or there, I could. And it turns out, summer of 2019, at my first drift competition, I tapped this thing into a wall.
Straightened up, so like when you hit, you straighten up. Yeah.
I caused enough damage to warrant cutting out the whole rear half of the car. I took it to my buddy's shop to get a tube rear installed. And since then, I've just kind of lost motivation with it. Definitely want to get this car back up and running, but here's where I'm gonna let it go into your guys' hands. What should be our priority here? Should it be getting this thing ready with the LS3 T56 combo in it and going out and drifting? Or should we prioritize what's in the garage? Our clean one owner S13 shell that we would have to decide what engine to throw in it. I really want to leave it in your guys' hands so you can join me on the journey. Because either way, we're gonna have fun and we're gonna make a cool car out of both of them. Just which one's gonna come first? Well, that's all I have for you guys. I hope you have an awesome one. Make sure to drop a like if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.